Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Unconfined Conversations with Ryan and Steve. I'm Ryan. This is my main man Steve, here in the set of Unconfined Conversations for episode 10. For our listeners out there, you can't see it, but we are holding up two hands with 10 fingers. What we're going to do after this for episode 11, we don't know. We do have spare hands, but I don't know if we want to get too much into using both hands. It more resembles spirit fingers at that point. So we'll
just said it.
We'll have to see what we do after that for sure. So yeah, Steve, before we get into today's topic, we're on episode 10. I mean, that's kind of a big deal.
It's a milestone for sure.
It is a milestone, and I'm so glad to share this studio space and this stage with you for the last 10 episodes, and hopefully for 10 times 10 times 10 more episodes to come.
As many as it takes.
As many as it takes, right? The cause is still there. The messages still need to be proclaimed, of course. And I'm very, very glad and very blessed to share this stage with you.
I echo the same.
So, for those of you who are listening, you can't see it, but I mean, my shirt is very loud today. We've been talking about my shirts the last couple of weeks. The weather has been so nice here in South Dakota, and I feel that it was appropriate to break out kind of a beach-themed, Hawaiian-themed shirt for today. More to come in the shirt game on future episodes.
Be careful.
Be careful. So, on today's episode, we're going to be talking about something that has really, maybe not surprisingly, but certainly pleasantly, become a huge factor in both my life and in Steve's life, and in many other people's lives as well. People who have experienced incarceration, people who are in prison. And today what we're going to be talking about is friendships and communities that are formed within the prison system, within the walls and the fences of the prisons here in South Dakota. So Steve, when we talk about friendships and communities, friendships are like you and I are friends.
Sure.
You know, we didn't always know each other. I think we got to know each other a few years into our incarceration. And, you know, we ended up in similar proximities to each other, and we started to talk and get to know each other, and then eventually that turned into a friendship. Mm-hmm. And as time went on, that friendship became deeper and deeper and deeper, and the level of respect that we had for each other continued to increase, and that turned into what we have here. It turned into Unconfined Conversations. Mm-hmm. It turned into me being the best man at your wedding, which is amazing. It turned into just this wonderful, wonderful part of our lives.
Right.
And it happened within the prison walls. Shocker. And the reason why I say shocker is because some people believe that it's not possible to go into a prison where there is violence and corruption and people are always moving around trying to be advantageous to themselves, whether it's circumventing the rules, taking advantage of people, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. People aren't always on the up and up. Mm-hmm. And the thought is that you can't find genuine friendships within the prison system or within the walls of the prison, nor can you then form actual beneficial and healthy communities within the prison. And those statements are just not true.
They're not.
And that's what we're going to talk about today. And so I want to ask you, when did you realize that the possibilities for actual genuine friendships and healthy communities actually existed within the walls of the prison system?
I would say probably right from the beginning. Just yesterday, just yesterday. I was at my place of employment, and a man walked in, and he was asking for some help or asking to talk with somebody or whatever. And he's kind of back over my shoulder, so I really couldn't see him, but I could hear whoever it was. And he started just saying, "Hey, this is why I'm here. This is kind of what I'm looking for, or maybe I have more questions." And so the person that was helping him said, "Well, what's your name?" And right when he said his name, I spun around because I'm like, I haven't heard that name in probably 25 years. And it was a friend of mine.
Really?
From years ago, who influenced me in a positive tone, specifically as it relates to just giving me encouragement that, hey, you're most likely going to go to prison. But when you do go, know that it doesn't have to be gloom and doom. It doesn't have to be violence. It doesn't have to be, racially divided. It doesn't have to be, where it's rapings and killings and this and that, all the things that I think are
Stereotypical.
stereotypical. I'm hesitant to even use the word common because I don't subscribe to the thought that says, once you enter that threshold, that doorway into prison, that automatically that makes you violent. And
Right.
whatever else you would put with that.
So you encountered him before you even went to prison.
I encountered him in county jail. And I'll just say his name, not in its entirety, but his name is Clayton. And very respected, older Native American, just a gentleman, a natural-born leader. And for some reason, he just made it a point to just impart knowledge to me. He's literally, and I told him this yesterday, I said, "You're one of the best three-point shooters I've ever been witness to in person. He can shoot threes anywhere on that court.
Lights out.
Lights out." And the younger guys, like he would just go out there and just mop them up and just rain threes from every corner of that court.
So you encountered him
Yes.
over 2 decades ago.
Yes.
And then run into him again just yesterday.
Just yesterday.
And was that the first time that you had seen him since when you first encountered him?
He remembers a time where he came in, but I don't recall that. And that's okay. They say that there's two things that happen when you get older. One, you lose your memory. I can't remember the other one. So
what was that other one again?
What were you saying again? No, but it was just such a beautiful thing to connect with him. But I took advantage of the opportunity, and I told him, I said, "Hey," I said, "I've waited all this time to tell you from a mature standpoint. I thank you for investing in my life all those years ago. And whether you knew it or not, whether you were intentional or not, you made an impact on my life. And I just want to say thank you." And I shook his hand, and I was standing there just looking at him. We took a picture together. And he said, "Will you talk to my son?" And my thought when I agreed to it was, oh yeah, maybe like in a few months or a few weeks, or, if it ever worked out, like I would speak to his son. And he said, "My son is right here behind me." And so for 10 minutes, he introduced us. And for 10 minutes, I just stood there and shared with this young man. He was 25. I said, "Hey, your father years ago imparted wisdom and knowledge in my life and helped me. And he's probably one of the many reasons, people-wise, that I'm here today, because he stood in that void. And instead of teaching me the wrong things about prison life, prison culture, violence, convict code, instead of teaching me all that stuff, he taught me just basic information that he knew I would need along the way, information that would help me. And so, yeah, it was cool just to come for that conversation to just come full circle, the friendship to come full circle, and then also to be able to, and I just thought about this earlier, right when I said it, his 25-year-old son, I hadn't seen this man in 25 years. So basically when he was in jail back then, he must have just
Right.
had that
Right.
child, not him, but his wife.
Yep.
And I just now thought about them like, wow, that's significant. 25 years I hadn't seen this person. He brings his 25-year-old son in. And in that short moment, with the wisdom, with the maturity that the Lord has given me, I was able just in a short order, just give him just boil down the essence of what I've gleaned through my experience incarcerated. Everything we're talking about, my friendships and things that people shared with me, and forgiveness issues that I had to work through, particularly with my father, is like, this is a prime moment. And so I just shared with him 10 minutes, shared practically my whole heart.
So do you think that what Clayton was able to share with you 25 years ago, at the very beginning of what you didn't even know what was ahead of you?
Not at all.
I mean, how could you have?
No.
Right? Most likely the things going through your mind were stereotypical things like what you just mentioned, as far as like what prison is, who is in prison, and what you can expect, especially as a young man. And, he said those things to you. And so you brought him up because he probably eased your mind a little bit
100%.
and allowed you to be open to the fact that perhaps there can be actual friendships. There
Yeah.
can be communities. So once you got to prison, you said almost immediately like you realized that. So once you got to prison, what were some of those first experiences with maybe not necessarily friendships, but at least witnessing the types of communities that are in prison and the positive communities that were there?
Sure. I would say in jail as well as prison, both of the communities that I really clung to was the church. There are churches that are located within the walls and fences of many institutions across this nation. And I think they just form these groups that essentially aim to just help you along the way. Call them life groups, call them community groups, call them discipleship groups, like fellowship, whatever the word is that you want to use there. Like I found for me, like that was one of the things that I know, was essential to just me moving forward and progressing through the system.
Yeah, I think my experience predicating me going to prison, as far as like me being in jail, I think was a little different than yours.
Sure.
I did not receive that type of message. In fact, I received much more of the concerning messages from people within the county jail that I was in, as far as, hey, you better watch out. Hey, don't go to the far end of the shower on the hill, et cetera, et cetera. Don't do this. Better watch out. You're young. And just like all these warnings, basically, is what kind of came to me. So I was incredibly fearful as a 16-year-old going into a men's prison.
As a 16-year-old should be, and that's just
correct.
There's something wrong with that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Something wrong with that, where you put a juvenile in an adult system. Like, what do you think's going to happen? And I know that wasn't true of you in
Right.
respect to that. The worst of the worst didn't happen to you. You didn't get thrown to the wolves where, you came out bitter and hardened because I believe that your story actually highlights a lot of what we're talking about today.
I think so too. And just to touch a little bit on what you just mentioned, I feel very fortunate and very blessed at the path that was put in front of me, and the people that I encountered, because you and I both know of other young men who came into prison under the age of 21, under the age of 18. Their experience was very hard.
Yeah.
Very, very hard.
Yeah.
In lots of different ways, which we won't get into here. But my experience before going to prison was full of warnings and fear. And I don't think that I really became aware of communities and actual friendships for a few years. My path just didn't take me there, right away. So it took a little bit. And before then, it was a lot of, how do I get by? How do I survive? Jumping around from here to there, going into the shoe a bunch, just kind of having a hard time in the first couple of years. But even within that, before I actually started finding my community and finding real friends, there were little flashes in the pan, so to speak, of good, genuine people who just did the right thing because it was the right thing to do.
Amen.
People who could stand on their integrity, and groups of those men who associated with each other, even though they didn't call it a community, but it was certainly a community. And those were there, and I think maybe that allowed me to be able to see that, hey, not everybody, I don't have to put my guard up with every single body that's there. I mean, that's a hard way to live.
It is.
Right? It's understandable, because sometimes you do have to be that way a little bit.
Right.
Otherwise, you can really get taken advantage of in prison. But to be that way all the time with every single body, that's a hard way to live. And it's hard to maintain, and it is incredibly taxing on a person's psyche and on their mind and on their spirit and on their soul. So to become aware of communities then introduces you to those men, and usually then that can turn into actual genuine friendships. Now, that doesn't mean that we just let our guard completely down and opened our arms to allow people within our close proximity, so to speak. People still had to earn our trust, and they had to earn ours, and we had to earn theirs as well. And just like you and I did. But those friendships that developed, and I'm not talking about, because there's absolutely a difference between associations and friendships. 100% difference. But actual friendships, those benefits started to pay off, I think, in both of our lives, where we could have people that we could confide in, people that we can talk about things that we just didn't feel comfortable talking with other people about, things that we're going through with our family, things that we're going through on the unit, things that we're going through at our jobs, and just people that could relate to us. And I think those friendships, especially in our case, because we were there for so long, were able to really develop and deepen over the years. Now, here's what comes the interesting part. So we're in prison, we're in this micro society. We develop these friendships while we're there with people who are there. And we establish these communities. Now, in the 90s and early 2000s, when a person was given their parole, a condition of the parole was that you were not allowed to associate with other people who were on parole. You were not allowed to associate with people who had a felony on their record. That was a part of your parole. And if you were discovered to be associating with, hanging out with, whatever it was, with people who were on parole, you could be subject to disciplinary action, including a parole violation. And I mean, we say that now and we're like, oh my gosh, like how that sounds so stupid, right? Mm-hmm. But in their minds, they thought, well, this person's on parole and this person's on parole. These people need to be around just regular people who can influence them positively, instead of somebody who's on parole and maybe they have addiction issues, maybe they have, whatever it may be. But what that did is it isolated people.
Sure.
It isolated people because then when you get out of prison, you're like, who can really understand me?
Right.
Who can identify with me? Who can I identify with now that I've had this life experience? And it just did not have a good effect.
Circling back around with friendships, it's like, so we don't want you to be friends with the people that you've been friends with for the past 20 years.
Right.
It's like you sever that. And it's bad enough that us being out here, and then of course us still having friends on the inside, it's bad enough that that's a thing. And it hurts a little,
It hurts a lot.
I think about my friends every day.
Yes.
I wonder what they're doing. I wonder if they're okay. I wonder if they're still doing the things that, we were doing years ago that were in the vein of positive. It wasn't destructive. It wasn't negative. It was all positive things. But yeah, I think about them every day. So it's bad enough that incarceration does that just naturally as we get out. But then, just furthering your point, then you sever that out here to where you can't associate with these other people. That really stinks.
It really stinks.
When it was like that.
Correct. And we need to clarify that it is not like that anymore.
At least it's not emphasized to the point where it's, if you're got talking
right
to Ryan on a podcast, you guys are going to be in trouble. So
yeah.
Obviously we know that otherwise I think we would be under some kind of double secret probation.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are, at this point, you could throw a stone in, we'll just use Sioux Falls as an example because that's where we live. You could throw a stone in Sioux Falls within 100 yards of yourself, and there will be somebody that has experienced incarceration, somebody that's on parole, who used to be on parole, whatever it is, right? Somebody has experienced incarceration to some degree. And whether it's a coworker, your neighbor, whoever it may be, somebody is like that. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard to get around without having that experience, right? Mm-hmm. Without encountering that. Now, when we're talking about friendships and communities inside, and now here we are on the outside, yes, some of our friends and the communities that we knew are still in there, and we think about them. And to your point, it's absolutely like a traumatic severing from those friendships and those communities. And I'll just give a quick example before we circle back around here. When I got out almost 4 years ago, I had been in the Mike Durfee State Prison for 10 consecutive years, around people that I had known for over 20 years, mm-hmm. and became incredibly close friends with, and had established wonderful communities, religious communities, work-based communities, like all of it. It was just my life, and those were my friends. And I got on the bus to leave, and it only really hit me that I was never going to see many of these men ever again, until we started to move on the bus and move towards the Sally Port to get out of the compound. And I was sitting alone on my bus seat. There wasn't another person sitting next to me. And I'm very grateful for that because I was looking out the window at the place that I had called my home for the last 10 years and the men that I had grown to have a great affection for. And I just started weeping uncontrollably in my seat for the next 10 to 12 miles because it was so sad leaving my friends.
Yeah.
And it continued to be that way for the next year and a half, where just little things like I would just remember my friends and that I can't talk to them, I can't see them, I can't do anything. And it would just, it really sucked. Really, really bad. And I think that just speaks to the level of genuine friendships that can exist and genuine communities that are positive can exist within the prison system. Now, you and I have both been out for over 3 years now, coming up on 4. 4 this year will be 4 for both of us. And some of those friends have gotten out. Some of those friends got out before we left. Some of those friends have gotten out after we've left. And we have reformed some of those communities. And dare I say, the reformation of these communities has really been a windfall, I think, for everybody involved in that. And I'll just use an example. I worked in the welding shop down in Springfield for the whole time that I was there, 10 years. And I formed amazing friendships and relationships with the men that were there. And now these men are part of my friend circle out here. We support each other. We hang out. We grill burgers in the summertime. We go to concerts. We go and do things together. And part of the reason why I think that we gravitate towards these men that we knew inside is because we have a shared experience. They get us. They understand the things that I'm going through because they're going through them. It's hard to integrate into society with people that have never had an incarceration experience,
Right.
because they just don't quite understand, and that makes it difficult. So being able to associate with and be friends with and reestablish communities with people that you did time with is incredibly important, I think.
I'd say definitely, and I get why they had the rule in place years ago, but I think that it was detrimentally harmful to some of those men who needed that. You know, for me, sociable, I enjoy friendship, I enjoy talking, I enjoy interacting, I enjoy spending time with, like all these things. Like if you're a friend of mine, like that's one of the things I enjoy doing. I enjoy cooking with you. I enjoy, let's go to recreation. Let's do this. Let's do that. This is a positive word. Let's scheme together.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I can say that word with a positive slant because there are so many things that you and I both have worked on together where it required our minds, you know, to come together, to have a discussion, to leave, to go to our other respective circles, friend circles, and then bounce ideas off of them and maybe meet a week later and come back and say, hey, I actually have this idea and this is where I think we could really excel. And this is a great idea, and this is what someone shared with me, and this is how perhaps they can come on board and help us with this. There's just so much of that. And I miss that part. You know, I don't remember who it was, but they commented, they said, you know, your community is literally 300 yards that way or 100 yards that way, or, you know, whatever size of prison that you were at. Like, that's your community. Those are your people. Those are the folk that are going through this lived experience with you, you know. And it is very unique. And I thought of this word as we were getting ready to start this episode. It was camaraderie, you know, that you develop these comrades within the system. And these are the people that you go through this experience with. And some are there the duration. You know, I think it was you. We were talking about friendship. And we were talking about some of those friends, you know, are short-lived. Some, like, stay with you. And others, you know, like, they leave you for a while, but then they come back, you know. And I believe that. You know, I believe that if you're a friend of mine, like, you're always going to be a friend. You know, I don't find this like, hey, I don't talk to that person anymore. I'm no longer their friend. The type of friendships that I strive for, that I enjoy, are the type that, and I could say that about this man here. You know, if I was not to see you for 50 years, I guarantee you, the 51st year, I guarantee you, like, we would just have so much to say to each other. That first encounter, it'd be just awesome.
100%. And I think you would agree with this too, that because of the genuine friendship that we have, even if we were to be separated, let's say for 50 years, right? By the way, we would be very old men at that point.
Well, I would just be middle aged at that point.
But
I get carded all the time. No, just fine.
Whatever.
I don't.
Oh my gosh. What is going on here on the set? I don't know. But if there was a time distance between the two of us, something significant, the moment that we encountered each other, we would just fall right back into where we were, right where we left off.
Why not?
Right?
Why not?
We absolutely would. And I think I've discovered that with guys who are coming out of prison, who I haven't seen for quite a long time. We just fall right back into it, like no time had ever passed.
That's the best.
And that, I think, is an indication of the genuineness of that friendship.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the types of friendships that I think normal people, which we're normal people too, that normal people just have. Now, we've been talking about establishing friendships and finding communities and the positiveness that those things create. But sometimes there are other messages that are said that promote the opposite type of idea. Messages that are delivered to men and women before they even go to prison. And some of those messages are, don't make friends, don't get close to anybody, just do your time, stay to yourself, and get out of there. And those messages can come from family members, community members, loved ones, friends, whoever it may be.
Your own attorney.
Your own attorney, perhaps. And then, after you get out, you can hear those same types of messages. Hey, don't be associating with other people who used to be in prison. You should be associating with people who have never been incarcerated, just regular free people. You need to distance yourself from people who have been in prison and that type of mindset. Now, maybe those messages come from a well-meaning place, right?
I'm sure they do.
And I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
But I think the opposite has been proven true, that you can allow yourself to form friendships and find communities, and that once you are released, that continuing those friendships and reestablishing those communities are incredibly beneficial and helpful. Mm-hmm. So what can we do, or at least on this platform, what can we say to help sort of change the tone a little bit when it comes to those messages? You know, whether it's messages being delivered before a person goes into prison or messages that a person receives after they've gotten out of prison. And where do those messages come from?
Mm-hmm. I think it's healthy, um, to have friendship. I was taught this years ago, and it's found in the Bible. God had made this observation, after he had created man, and he says it's not good for man to be alone. And the context, which I would say that speaks very highly of, is marriage, but relationship nonetheless. Friendship is relationship. And I think that's a healthy thing. While I was incarcerated, like I gravitated towards those who were, I don't want to use the word smarter. Those who were educated.
Intellectual.
Intellectual.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just say that word, intellectual. I gravitated towards them because I only went as far as the 8th grade with my education. I got my GED while I was in some juvenile facility. And so I knew in my mind, in my heart, that I'm not going to learn in this environment unless I spend time with men who are sharper than I was. And those guys, like, they sharpened me up. Those guys taught me things. Those guys educated my mind. Those guys taught me how to think. And many, I think, took that role on. And some even unknowingly. Just having a conversation with people and just hearing what they have to say, their mindset, their philosophy, their perspective. And really what that did for me was just enriched my life with these meaningful relationships where I knew I could always glean a good perspective, especially if I was weighing out a decision. It was good to have multiple people to bounce that off of, including yourself. Like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about, or this is what I went through recently, and this is how it impacted me, or this is the way I'm thinking about it, and right or wrong, and hear what you have to say. So I think it's a good thing that we're encouraged to find those people, find those men in the system who can help instill in you or your loved one a good sense of values, and hopefully help you reestablish your morals, help you to see like you should see again. And again, I'm not for, hey, as soon as you cross that threshold, as soon as you enter into prison, you got to act like a hardened criminal. You got to get tattoos. You got to join a gang. You got to be violent. You got to do this. You got to buck against the system. Like, I'm not a believer of that, because I don't feel that helps anything. The whole reason why we have this platform,
right,
I would say, is because we felt the call, to push this conversation, to have this conversation, to start this platform, to discuss these issues, because they are important. These men are going into the system, quote unquote, normal, and coming out different, hardened, bitter, angry, delusional. Like, there's a variety of different things that are happening when there isn't the positive relationships. There isn't the positive influences being allowed to speak into your life. Both of us were young,
right,
and I think we absolutely we spoke about this before. We absolutely benefited from those who were older than us.
Yeah,
both of us,
for sure. And I think, one way to push back on those pessimistic messages about, hey, don't create friendships while you're in prison, or hey, you need to stay away from other convicts after you get out. I think one way to push back on that a little bit is not even words coming from you or I, but it's really just like looking at examples. of places where guys work together, where guys are successful in their personal and professional lives. You know, if you just look at you and I and your circle of friends and my circle of friends, I mean, we make conscious decisions to surround ourselves with people who are going to be in our best interest.
You have to.
And we have to. Absolutely, we have to. And that comes from maturity, and that comes from, just being a little older, and then seeing examples of how engaging in the opposite works detrimentally to a person. So I think if people can look at examples like you and I and others who are of our own ilk, and say, you know what? It is a good thing to find genuine friends. It is a good thing to find good communities even within prison. And it is a good thing to associate with guys that you did time with, or even if you didn't do time with them, but they also did time. That can be incredibly positive in their lives. And I'll just give a very quick example here. There's a guy in Sioux Falls here. He's staying at a halfway house. And I never knew him. Never, ever. But he called me one day. This is maybe about 5 weeks ago. He had gotten my phone number from another guy who was in prison who had gotten my phone number. And he says, hey, contact Ryan. He'll see if he can help you out. Okay, cool. So he calls me from the halfway house. And again, I never knew this guy. But I said, okay. So let me go pick you up, take you out to lunch, celebrate your new freedom, So we did that. Took him to a restaurant, ate some home-cooked food from his own country, and then I took him around to find a place where he could get some money sent to him from his sister who lives in England, some sort of money wire system. So we did that on the first day that we had ever met each other, right? And every weekend since then, I've gone and picked him up, taken him to places. I've taken him to my own house. We've eaten together every time. And this guy has no one in Sioux Falls. He has no one in South Dakota. All his family is elsewhere. Wow. He doesn't know the city at all. He's never been here before. He doesn't know how to get around. He doesn't know anything about this place. He just needed that one person who can identify with him, who knows what it's like, someone who has been where he was, to say, hey, I understand you, and I know what it's like getting out, and I'm going to help you as best I can. And so sometimes, even without establishing friendships inside, I would call this man my friend at this point, because he's proven to be trustworthy, he's proven to be upright and moral and grateful, etc., right? And I'm going to continue to help him out and do all these kind of things for him because he seems to be on a really good track, right? And so even if there wasn't a previously established friendship, just the relatability, like, hey, I understand where you were, I'm going to try to help you out. And sometimes that's just what somebody needs. When they get out of prison, they just need somebody who can say, hey, I understand where you come from. I'm going to help you out. I've been through all this stuff before. Let me show you a blueprint, whatever it may be. So I think, we can conclusively say that real friendships can be found in prison. Beneficial communities can absolutely be found and formed within the prison system, and in fact they should be fostered, certainly while you're there, but especially after you get out, when that may be the most stressful part of your entire life, is re-entering into society and trying to figure all that stuff out, but then having people who have been in your shoes before to lean on and to say, hey, I know that you understand me and I just need a little bit of help. And from the other side to say, hey, I've been where you were, I got you, right? So I think I would just encourage and say to our listeners and our viewers that if you have somebody that's going into prison, whether it's their first time or whether it's their however manyth time, just encourage them to look for positive communities. And within those positive communities, you can find genuine, true, and positive friendships, hopefully within those communities. And that can continue and be beneficial for your loved one once they get on the outside. Mm-hmm. So I would just encourage friends and family to consider sending that type of message to your loved one as they get ready to go inside of the prison. And if they already are inside the prison, give them the same message. Mm-hmm. Find positive communities where there are men with integrity and with morals that can be of a good influence on you, and then foster those relationships and those friendships, and then continue them when you get out. So, anything else to add before we close this episode?
I would say no.
Put a bow on it.
Yeah.
I think so too.
That's pretty good. I just like that we can have this conversation and not like we're setting the record straight about things. I think that we're just being vulnerable and transparent enough for others to listen to this and for them to make a decision that I think, if they follow in our footsteps, that their loved one can come out of this experience better than when they went in. Absolutely. I think that that's the goal.
Absolutely. And, I think that's a great way to wrap up our 10th episode here on Unconfined Conversations. We're very thankful for these 10 episodes, and we look forward to many, many more episodes here on the set of Unconfined Conversations where we can be a little vulnerable, where we can share our stories and our experiences with our listeners and our viewers, and hopefully be able to change some minds and to be able to educate as much as we possibly can. So make sure to check us out on all of our social media platforms. Check us out on Facebook and YouTube. And now check us out on TikTok, where you can find all of our shorts and all of our full episodes, and you can view them anytime that you want. For our listeners, check us out on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Amazon Music. So make sure to like and subscribe to our channel. And by the way, if you have something to say about any of our, or anything to comment about any of our episodes, make sure to drop a comment. Let us know what you think, and then we'll try to see what we can do about that too. So from here and the set of Unconfined Conversations, I'm Ryan, this is Steve, and we'll see you next time on Unconfined Conversations.